Just how important is it to manage your data management processes for clients? Well, that's what we're going to be exploring today in the Data Radio Show. Hello there, and welcome to this week's Data Radio Show. I'm your host, Paul, and we're going to be exploring a whole bunch of different facets to data management and data engineering. This week, we're going to be taking a look at the need for making sure that you manage your data management processes really well, particularly when you're working with a range of different clients who have a range of different needs. Sam is going to be sitting down and having a chat to Julien Redmond, who's the CEO of Ignition and Iris, based out of Australia, where they're going to find out what some of the typical problems are that data managers and engineers have to grapple with on a day-to-day, client-by-client basis. But before we jump into that, make sure you hit that subscribe button so that you're following the channel. You can get some great updates of content as we bring it out. Or jump over to the Data Pro newsletter, give that a follow. If you're not already, you can have some information sent straight to your inbox. And if you want to get involved in the community so you can talk to experts who already work in this field, then go and check out our Data Innovators Exchange on School. They're all linked in the description down below, so they're super easy to find. All right, let's jump over to the interview now between Sam and Jules.
Well, hello, listeners and viewers. Today I'm joined by Julien Redmond, one of the founding partners in actually the Data Innovators Exchange. Welcome, Julien, or welcome back, I should say.
Hi, Sam. Thank you very much. Nice to be here again.
I thought that today we could do a bit of a deep dive into the topic of managing your data management processes and some of the intricacies, if you like, associated with both Data Vault and those automation of Data Vault processes. So I believe that you've been doing some research or engagement with your audience around what are some of the typical problems that Data Vault engineers and managers kind of grapple with on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I mean, there's a range of personalities and personas, I guess, of people that get involved in the Data Vault project. So, you have those that are leading the project and actually trying to manage the Agile processes. So, those people generally have Agile skills, but they need to understand how that relates to a data warehousing project. Then you have, architects and data modelers, the data engineers. You have those that are focused more on the consumption end, BI specialists and professionals. You also have analysts involved who might be actually trying to provide the use cases. So when you do Data Vault, you're really trying to actually deliver the data for a particular use case. So there's a lot of different, personas involved. And we often talk probably only really about a couple of them, and maybe others get a little left behind. But we're actually providing customized training to our customers on how to all of these different roles achieve what they're trying to achieve, to have the skills or the knowledge that they need. It's kind of wider than you might originally think of as well. There's a data modeler and there's a data engineer. It's a little more complex.
And I guess from a manager's perspective, you're grappling with things like resource allocation and some others.
Yeah, absolutely. Resource allocation, you want to obviously create a project and a project team that has the resourcing that it needs from technical assets, the cloud services or whatever else, the human resources aspect, standards and methodologies to follow, and that's where Data Vault fits in. So there is a lot of juggling of that, but also from a manager's perspective, there's a fair bit of understanding that needs to happen around what can be delivered to the business and how it will be delivered. Because if the business tries to ask for everything all at once, they're going to be disappointed, because that's not how you build a modern data platform. So trying to actually have the business ask for specifics and detailed requests that are bite size. So it might be a single report, but single report can be delivered very quickly. Whereas if you ask for 100 reports, then you are waiting a long time to get those 100 reports. So doing things incrementally and setting up the the requirements gathering and the requests from the business side so that they understand it, is where managers can probably be most effective, in setting those expectations.
Yeah, well, actually, that was the word that came to mind, managing expectations, but at the same time, being able to allocate resources strategically, across both those demands and some of the important stuff that you've got to do in the background from a process and governance, data quality standpoint.
Absolutely. I mean, if a manager doesn't give the team the space and the priority that it needs to focus on governance and privacy and other data quality and all other sort of fundamental aspects, then you may deliver something, but it may not last the test of time, or it may not be fit for purpose, even at the start. So.
And how about from a strategic level in managing up? Not just around customers, your peers in the business, setting expectations in terms of what becomes possible, at a senior exec level.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. So there's definitely managing risk. So when you're dealing with enterprise data, there is always risk involved. So no company wants to find themselves, in the newspaper because of a data breach or something like that. So there is managing or setting that expectation that there are the fundamental things that need to actually be done and put in place so that the organisation is doing a data related project safely. And that's becoming more and more evident as we shift from sort of machine learning and deep analytics into AI now as well, and you're getting agents requesting data from warehouses and all those sorts of things. That's there's even greater exposure, I think, if you don't have things like access control and all of those sorts of problems solved. And then I think there's the cost expectations that a manager wants to the most effective organizations I've seen actually will have a centralized team, but they actually have a mechanism to actually spread the cost out to those that are consuming the analytics, so that it's essentially uh, um, business needs driven. So a needs driven sort of economy for the requirements of the analytics platform, the data platform, so that you're understanding what the benefit is and what the cost is. You're marrying those up. That gives you your return on investment calculations, but also it actually allows the business units to understand the cost and effort involved in producing the analytics they want, so that their requests might be more grounded in reality.
So maybe switching from the manager's perspective to the actual engineers, architects, or architect and engineers perspective. What are some of the common challenges that you've come across in relation to the use of Data Vault in organizations? Thinking of some of the companies that you've worked with recently.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll talk at a high level. Obviously, I'm not our Data Vault trainer. We can always have Knowles on another one to go really deep into this. But I think, and I've already mentioned it, the most common mistake that I see is biting off way more than you can chew. Like not really actually thin slicing your project and being agile, not focusing on a single unit of work. So a single report might only take a handful of tables of source data to actually deliver. But if that's bound up in bringing lots more data in because you're too focused on ingesting data and not focused on the process beyond getting things into the raw vault and solving your business rules and delivering, an information mart and delivering an actual report to the business, then the business can be left wondering what's going on and waiting. So we see that a lot, and it's a bit of a common mistake. The other thing is the varying degrees of understanding of the Data Vault standards and the education. So we provide, Data Vault certification training for people, and I think it's absolutely the right way to start your Data Vault journey. But you need to have some experience and some support. And so, obviously, Ignition provides support to all of its customers, and there's a lot of really good partners around the world that have very deep skills in Data Vault that can provide that same sort of support if you don't have it in your organization. Lots of organizations may have a couple of people who've been doing it for a while and they really understand, the processes of modeling. But if it's a new team that's all new to Data Vault, then, there's a hell of a lot of information in the certification training that you can't possibly be expected to absorb all in one go and then apply perfectly. So there's improvement because of some of the Data Vault specific automation tools and those sorts of things that actually help in that process, but you still need to know how to be a good Data Vault modeler.
And so looping back to the resource management side of things, I guess one of the issues that a lot of businesses are having to deal with is staff turnover. And there is a certain overhead associated with running and operating the Data Vault methodology. What are some of the strategies that managers can deploy to reduce that overhead? And you've kind of touched on training, but I believe there's this component of institutional knowledge that becomes an issue.
Well, I mean, to start with, I'd say that it's not inherent to Data Vault. All the approaches for managing data in any way, or if you're going to just build a lake and build dimensional models on it or whatever else, you need skilled resources. They need to know how to move data around, how to manage data, how to model data, how to govern data, how to improve its quality, all of those sorts of things. But what Data Vault gives you is actually a complete, concise set of standards to follow. But you need to learn the standards. So there is the certification training. There is that kind of mentoring thing. There's really good knowledge bases as well. So obviously the community here, the Data Innovators Exchange, is one of those bodies that has good knowledge, and good sharing environment for that sort of knowledge. So seeing peer-to-peer interaction on this platform, and people helping each other out when they hit challenges and pose a question and someone answers, that's fantastic. And there's other environments that do that as well. There's some of the vendors run various there's the Snowflake user group, for instance. There's also community-based user groups in some of the countries, and so they're really good resources. But and then you get into the specifics of tools. Obviously I have a bit of a leaning because we've been developing the Iris tool and we've built an entire knowledge hub around that, which takes what you learn in the certification training and interprets that into how would you use Iris to implement all of that learning. And it really focuses on making the user experience of a tool simple, or as simple as we possibly can at this point. And then reinforces that with a knowledge base, so that if you do have a new user coming on, still going to need to go through the certification training, but then their ramp up time to get to that kind of expert level is far quicker. So that's something that we've been really focusing on. It's not an easy road. It's not something that you learn in a couple of weeks. The guys that are really, really strong and really good at Data Vault have been doing it for years, and and have experienced all of the varying challenges that you find in data, and so their knowledge is invaluable. And so communities like this, and a way to access that knowledge base is fantastic.
Just thinking about units of work and time to value, what are some of the common traps that engineers using Data Vault kind of fall into?
We had one customer once that we were unsuccessful in convincing them to not do this, but their approach was that if they were going to go get data from a source system, they wanted to ingest all the data in that source system before they started talking to the business about requirements for reporting and analytics. And so that led them down a path of actually connecting to a whole series of source systems and ingesting a huge amount of data into their raw vault without actually delivering anything to the business, and that caused a lot of frustration at their senior management level, because it looks like a traditional data warehousing project then, because they're plowing in money, they're plowing in time and resources, and not getting anything out. And if that is the experience that someone's having around Data Vault, then it's being done wrong, because it should be literally a handful of tables to all the way through to a report, and keep doing that iteratively until you've delivered what you need to deliver. Another thing that I think is a good bit of advice for data warehouse owners or heads of analytics is early on focus on something new for the business. So if the lots of data vault projects get stood up to replace an old warehouse that's failing and not doing what it should do. And so the initial thought is, well, I'm just going to move all of the reports from the old warehouse to the new warehouse, and then we'll have success because we'll be off the old platform. And there may be a big return on investment number associated with getting rid of an old system and getting rid of maybe software licenses and all of those sorts of things. But if you are a business user and you're running a big project and all you're getting is the same reports coming from some different system in the back end that you never interact with, what did you actually get out of this new warehouse? You may have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars and you got what you already had, or what appears to be what you already had. It might be far better governed, it might be far less risky to run, it might be more sustainable, but you haven't delivered anything new. So within the mix of the project, deliver something new, deliver a new piece of analytics. And that can be, while you're bringing in the data that's being moved from the old warehouse, find new insights. Focus on that consumer end of the supply chain, so that some new insights are being delivered to the business. Maybe it's ingesting a source that isn't currently in the warehouse, so that you can now combine some data from the old warehouse with a new source of data, and provide some insight that hasn't been previously delivered. That will offset that perception that they're paying a lot of money to get what they already had.
Okay. One of the things that we've talked about is adherence to policies and procedures, and doing that in the face of staff turnover and a sort of lower level of knowledge. I've heard you talk about customers that are grappling with this particular challenge. Can you just talk a little bit more about that?
Well, I think when team members move, often you lose knowledge that walks out the door with them, unfortunately, and so that can be knowledge about Data Vault, and in essence that can be solved with the certification training and some time, some experience, and then can be knowledge about how the platform that's been delivered, the technical platform, has been delivered, and that's learning maybe a bunch of new software, and some of that software is more complex than others. Some's more complex than it needs to be. And then there is the subject matter expertise. So the types of data that a particular organization deals with, the subject matters that it deals with, how it structures its information, and those sorts of things. And so there's different parts to all of that. And so the first one is, there's a pretty worn path. Get through the Data Vault training, start learning Data Vault, all of that sort of stuff. We've been focusing a lot around that next step, which is how do you actually learn the platforms. So with the Iris tool, the actual user interface and the software development process has been simplified to be very small, so it meets that unit of work that we were talking about, and very iterative. So you are making it a very standardized approach. Every table that comes into the warehouse gets dealt with in exactly the same way, same 5 steps in the process, and the code for loading that data is generated. So it makes that part very easy to teach and very easy to learn. There's a lot of automation. there's different levels of automation too. So there is there is the generating the code, but there's automated testing. There's automation you can add into your CI/CD framework, to your orchestration framework. So there's a range of different things you can do within a platform as well. And so Iris focus very much on making the data vault step easy, and we've also made it so that that simple approach to data vault can be deployed with any of the big data platforms. So it doesn't matter what data platform an organization is invested in, they can add the best possible data vault automation to that platform as a component, as an add-on, rather than having to replace things that they've already deployed, that their team's already learnt. And so there's things that can be done in that. And then as I was talking about the knowledge hub and this community, there's other things that can support that learning process. There's, Iris comes with free online training and all of that sort of stuff, and other vendors do these sorts of things as well. But making that as simple and as automated as possible is very key. And then there's an interesting one actually when it comes to data modeling. A lot of the automation platforms use modeling tools to kick off their automation, and so they've got a modeling interface that is designed to help create an initial data vault model. But it isn't necessarily a full-scale enterprise data modeling tool that is collaborative, allows different modelers to collaborate on a larger enterprise model, to manage the model over years and years as it evolves, and new things come along and need to be merged into the existing model and all of that sort of stuff. So there is some limitations on whether how you've structured your platform and what tools you've used as to whether you're going to be focused on just automation or focused on managing your model over the long term. So we address that with Iris by just taking the modeling tool out and saying we will use and connect to any model created by any enterprise modeling tool. Iris just focuses on the bit it does well. There's others that are, that if you become very good in the tool, you can make those sorts of things work, even though the modeling aspect might be focused purely on creating the automation model. But the problem there, I guess, is that if you have changes in team members, you lose that knowledge. So, so there's a range of things. The final part of that, and sorry, there's a very long answer. The final part of that was understanding the organization's information, and there's things that can be done there to help. So really well set up governance frameworks can be very valuable. If you have really well developed terms and definitions that are linked to your data assets, then that is knowledge. That supports an analyst's understanding of where the data is coming from, or a data engineer's understanding of where the data is coming from. What does it actually mean? Can I actually use it for the purpose that I want to use it for? And we've been having lots of conversations over the last few weeks around using some of the large language models to actually help improve the classifications of terms and definitions within the governance realm, within a business glossary that's attached to technical metadata. So there's some tools that already have some very good capability out there that do that, and then there's obviously very easy ways to build an AI solution based on one of the big LLM models to trawl through your corporate data set and understand the how you classify your data and what your terms and definitions should be. Obviously, it's not. You still need to review it. You still need the governance structure, but making what used to be quite a tedious job a little bit quicker. So they're really interesting conversations. There's a lot of stuff that you can use like very early experimental style AI projects to focus on internal benefit, building the foundation of your data and your data quality and your data classification, so that when you get to externally facing AI solutions, which we all know are coming, that they're built off a better foundation.
Yeah, well, I'd love to talk until the cows come home about the deployment of AI agents, but there's one thing that we haven't touched upon, which I think is a challenge for your managers, and that's around compliance, regulatory compliance, and the increasing need to be quite transparent and have robust governance systems in place. Maybe just touch on how getting sort of consistency in deployment aids your ability to be able to meet the regulatory requirements, especially in light of AI.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, if you have a team of 30 developers all handwriting code to load data into a data warehouse, you're going to get 30 different styles of writing code. You're going to get people who had a good day and then a bad day. So you get consistency by using automation. If that automation has very good templates, then the actual structure of the code that's developed for your data platform is very easy to understand and very easy to read, not only by humans but by machines as well. And then if you're actually the way that you kick off that automation is by feeding it the same metadata every time in the same bite-sized chunks in the same unit of work, then your development process within the step that loads code from source through to your warehouse is extremely consistent. You can interrogate the actual templates that generate the code. You can interrogate the code itself. You can interrogate the model. Then you can interrogate the data in the data platform. And with Iris, we have multiple ways to solve that. So Iris will provide a file that's got well-structured metadata for a tool to ingest. But what we're seeing is a lot of the governance tools now are actually the capability to scan the data and understand it within the warehouse is actually, and the code that's loading it is light years on from where it used to be. And so in a lot of cases, we're optimizing our code so that it can be well scanned by a range of different tools because people, for whatever reason, they choose different governance tools. Some want what's embedded and comes with their cloud service provider's platform, and some want best of breed with or for whatever reason. So we're trying to make what we do a little bit more generic so that regardless of what tool they have or if they change tools, that the ability for all of that code to be read by a governance tool and provide end-to-end lineage and support all of your other governance aspects is actually there. And so that's one aspect of it. Some of the other aspects are actually your approach to modeling as well. So being very focused on the way you split satellites and those sorts of things so that you are separating your PII data or highly secure data. These are the kind of things that are taught in the Data Vault certification training. You follow those rules and you will create a highly secure data platform where your team at least can very easily understand where everything exists, where your sensitive data sits, and then applying things like access control. We really like the InfoSecure tool from the InfoVia team in the US because that uses similar metadata to make sure that no user can access information that they're not entitled to see. And that works well if you've structured your model well and your code's consistent and all of those sorts of things.
Right. So I guess just trying to tie this up in a bow, so to speak. I guess what customers are looking for. So thinking of customers as those managers in charge of resources and getting alignment and complying and all of that good stuff is something that's intuitive, robust, and scalable.
Yeah, I think intuitive is a big word. If you're talking end to end. So from I think that there's lots of good pieces of training and advice that exist. and one of the most complex parts was the data engineering task, especially when people were doing it manual, or data vault automation has been added to data management platform tools have had data vault automation added to it. It's created a very complex kind of development process, and those sorts of things are hard to learn. So intuitive for us is, that's a word we're focused on with Iris, because we want that process. It is literally a wizard style generation. You follow the steps, do the same thing each time. So there are bits that we've made intuitive. The modeling step is still reliant on a good data vault modeler. We can automate a fair bit of that now, and there's some really good tools as well, like Flow BI, that are trying to use big models to help people in the modeling task. And we can take what they do and use Iris to deliver the code. So there's automation and intuitive steps for putting those puzzles together. The scalability bit, I think, is probably in most cases solved if you're using a cloud data platform. We have a reference architecture for a modern data platform using any of the big, lakehouse style platforms, and that allows you to scale to more data than I would want to have to deal with. So I'm sure that there is some government or business that might outstrip some of that scalability, but for most organizations, the cloud service providers can provide these sorts of platforms that are an economical cost, and it gives you that scalability. And then the flexibility is just about dealing with change. And so if your development process from modeling and code generation and CI/CD and deployment, if that's well set up, then dealing with change isn't too hard. You might have something significant at a source change, and therefore that all flows through and it affects a fair bit of stuff. Regardless of what you've done, that's still going to be a challenge. But small day-to-day changes, you can just roll through, and that gives you the flexibility. And then I think, because if you've got in that groove of doing things bite size, then often change just means I need something fast, really. We're now getting data from this business partner. They're going to send you 3 files, but we need to map that against our customer set, and we need it tomorrow. That sort of stuff would be really easy to deal with if you're talking about just bringing in incremental little bits of data, adding it to a well-designed model, and, with those sorts of tools.
Yeah, I guess when I was talking about scalability, I wasn't meaning it in the technology sense. I was actually meaning it in the people and process.
Yes. Yeah, I missed that. But a good point. And I think that really just comes down to making the process easier to do. Which is obviously what we're focused on. I've said it a few times. If you can make the process easier to follow, easier to learn, with a better support base, a better knowledge base supporting that activity, then you can get people up to speed quicker. We're all dealing with aging workforces, in our industry and in lots of industries. And so what you want to do is actually be able to take people and get them on this learning path quickly, and not overcomplicate things that don't need to be.
I guess that's where a playbook comes in handy.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. So obviously in the Knowledge Hub with Iris, we have the Iris playbook, which is what I was saying at the start, is the essentially what you learn in the Data Vault certification course translated into how you use Iris to make those things happen. So very straightforward. There's obviously an online training course, and there's a tips and tricks classroom as well with cool stuff in there to help people as they come across questions they didn't know that they were going to ask and never thought they needed the answer to.
So that's a perfect place for us to leave it. Julien, thanks so much for your time, and I'm sure we'll be talking on the subject again.
Thanks, Sam. It was great fun.
Hey, I want to thank Sam and Jules for this week's interview. It's always really fascinating to sit down and hear some of those nuanced things that crop up for people working in slightly different fields that you might not necessarily be used to. And learning about the management of management processes is a really fascinating one for me. Hey, before we go, don't forget to hit that like button if you're watching this on YouTube, or share it, tell people about what's going on so that more people can tune in and learn and have the experience that you've had. Until next time, look after yourself, live long, prosper, be one with the force, and I will catch you all later.